Hi everyone. Has everyone got a mic and does it work?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Great start. So yes, all our panellists work in film and TV with production companies to create more authentic portrayals of sex on screen, and also to support more authentic and sort of, I guess, safer working practices as well on set. There's been quite a rise in more specialist roles like intimacy practitioner and intimacy coordinator, as well as wellbeing support on set. So I think to start, it would be great to hear from you, Ita, about, I guess, the origin of the role of intimacy practitioner and how it came about and what the sort of ongoing work is.
So thank you. First of all, it's an absolute, pardon me, it's a pleasure to be here, and this whole festival is just amazing. So the role of the intimacy coordinator, I was developing the role since 2014, and I first shared it with the industry, with the Personal Managers Association in June of 2017, where the agents instantly were saying, we need this, but the industry, as yet, it was challenging to open it out. And then, of course, the shift with the Time's Up and the Me Too movement meant that the industry then was looking at how we work with best practice. And so the major thing that's happened is, once a role has been established in the process, is the industry understanding that actually bringing a professional process to intimate content that hadn't been there at all before means that everybody can work with respect, that everybody can work to the top of their game, in dealing with the intimate content. So we support the producers in putting in place best practice across the whole of a production that takes care of everybody, cast and crew. It means that we can work openly and creatively, so listening to the director's vision, and that's in the place where opening out that conversation means that we can be creative, and that's where we can bring in specialists to make sure, again, we tell authentic storytelling, more creative storytelling, so making sure, like working on It's a Sin, working with LGBTQ people to make sure it's authentic. If there's a birthing scene, working with an expert midwife, IVF scenes, working with an IVF specialist, and again, that authenticity is really important. So that, again, we're really helping people to be seen in who they are when we're telling these storytellings. And then if it's challenging intimate content, then also recognising that in the risk assessment that we create as intimacy practitioners. And if the production hasn't already got a wellbeing practitioner on board, then we flag that and say that's part of how we work. We dovetail with the intimacy coordinator in order to, again, help everybody to be taken care of personally. And that means that then professionally, everybody can actually elevate their game, and we can tell better intimate storytellings and reflect our humanity in a better way.
Thank you so much. Moving on, I suppose, in a connected way, as you were sort of referencing to Sarah and Solace Mind, it would be great to, I suppose, talk about, what these guys were saying about the sort of meaningful collaboration and it not feeling like a sort of tick box exercise, which I think is really key, and what the sort of the importance of that mental health support and wellbeing support is for the production.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Is this working? Oh, yeah. I think it's really important. I mean, I think it's key. And I think when I set up the company, I was very clear. I didn't want it to be a tick box exercise. I wanted it to be effective support. And obviously, this is a unique sector. So, any wellbeing support, if it's online, if it's in person, needs to be accessible 24 hours a day, different languages, people to find practitioners they can work with where they feel represented. So it is very much about community and about collaboration. And for me, best practice is always, a bit to Ita's point, about being embedded at the start, so being on right in development and prep, and being there for all the cast and crew. So we don't just work with cast, we'll support all the crew. Best practice is throughout the whole process, so from prep to shoot to post, so that people feel supported right at the outset, and I think that's key. And I think being on set to work with intimacy practitioners when there's difficult content is just that other added layer of support for everyone. And you're just helping to create that psychological safety that I think it's so important to enable people to be as creative as they need to be and do their best jobs.
I think I also just want to add that we at Seesaw have worked with Sarah and Solace Mind for the last few years on all of our productions. And I think one of the things that I really want to make clear is that it's not actually as difficult as you think to integrate wellbeing support, and especially sort of therapy and psychological support into your productions. It's not insanely expensive. It's actually very, very easy to do. And yeah, we've worked on a lot of productions for many seasons as well. So
yeah, which I think I was saying earlier, which I think is so lovely, because it means, you know, some of the actors, whether that's Heartstopper, Slow Horses, we've supported for 3 years. So they have the same practitioner every time they come back to shoot. They can check back in with the same psychotherapist, the same coach, whoever they want to see. So I think that's so nice when it works like that, and everybody knows what they're going to get when they step onto a Seesaw production. There's that, you know, safety right at the outset.
I'd like to bring in Isabel and Jeff to talk about the consultation process that you've had, and maybe some examples that you have of productions where the collaboration has worked really successfully in the past, maybe starting with Isabel.
Thanks, Sam. So I work for Brooke, which is a sexual health charity, and we have experts across kind of clinical services, across education. We have a strong advocacy arm as well. And some of the more successful partnerships that we've had and collaborations that we've had have been with, so Netflix is a really good example. We partnered with Netflix on sex education, which is a really obvious example, but a lovely one to work on. And similarly to what Sarah was saying, the relationship grew from kind of the first series to the last series, and we went out with a bang, and we collaborated hosting events across freshers' fairs across England and Wales, and really using Netflix and sex education as a hook to engage more young people and have really meaningful conversations with them about sexual health and wellbeing. And another couple of really successful examples have been with BBFC and Interfilm, where we've kind of supported by developing education resources around film. So using film as a really good resource for teachers to have conversations with young people, using the resources that we kind of wrap around for those.
Jeff?
Yeah, so I think as an LGBTQ plus consultant, I think the two obvious examples that stand out to me is Heartstopper, which was sort of one of the first productions I got to work on, and Baby Reindeer, which has just come out. And I think why those two stand out in my mind is those were shows that I started working on essentially as soon as sort of the story ideas were there and the first set of scripts were there, and I was able to sort of read through them. And I think what works particularly for my role is it's obviously wonderful that there's sort of an increase in showing sort of diverse stories in the media, but often creators are people who are sometimes sharing their lived experience and are often then the person who's becomes a resource on all issues related to that topic when it's LGBTQ plus storylines. And so I see my role as coming in and not necessarily making people do more unpaid labor on set as cast and crew. I can sort of be that resource as someone who's worked in that sector. And for both of those shows, I was sort of able to get to grips with the content and provide an understanding of not just creating, it's not about creating a politically correct show. It's not about showing the best gays that have ever existed. It's about showing something that's real and showing how this will land in the real world with the communities that are going to be affected by it, because sometimes those communities aren't necessarily always involved in all of the process. And so I think the reaction to Heartstopper and Baby Reindeer when it comes to the queer storylines has sort of shown how that approach from bringing me in at the beginning rather than saying at the end and saying, we've done this show, how do you think it's going to land, would be quite different.
I mean, yes, exactly. I think everyone has talked about the need to be brought into the process as early as possible. And I think that goes a long way to the sort of collaboration and making sure that everyone, it feels as authentic as possible, because otherwise you're sort of bringing someone in to put out a fire sometimes. And actually, if you've got everybody involved as early as possible, everyone feels safe from the very beginning. You've both talked about this already, but I just wonder if you have anything else more to add, Ita and Sarah, about the holistic approach and the sort of aftercare, because I think sometimes what gets forgotten is when everyone's can be very safe on set during production and even into post, but actually we really need to think about the aftercare when it comes to the release. And I'm sure, that's been huge with Baby Reindeer.
Yes. So absolutely, that a big part of our role, sort of the overall tenets are open communication and transparency, and then putting in place agreement and consent, and then clear choreography, and then closure. So that closure is really important. Invariably, an artist will really go there on the day, they're on that ride of adrenaline, you'll check out with them on the day, and they'll go, yeah, absolutely fine. But it's really important, and a really fundamental part of our practice and what we put in place in the industry is then we wait at least 24 hours and check in with the cast, and see how they feel. Because that's when someone slept on something and then they had that ring in the stomach and go, oh, actually, I've given a little bit too much of my nudity and I'm now feeling vulnerable. So, and that's what we need to catch. And the intention is that someone is stayed listened to and cared for, and being able to be autonomous and creative throughout the whole process. So I had an actress say that exactly the same thing to me. The following morning, we were back doing more scenes, and she'd go, oh, I slept on it, and yeah, exactly that. I've given too much. And she said, but I have to shut up and put up because I've now done the scenes. It's like, no. So we spoke to the producers, and we discussed that. And then again, another really important part for the actor to be able to know that they feel empowered and happy with what goes out is that they see the intimate content in some way. So they can either see it on the day on set, or they can have the rushes prepared and they see it next time they're in, or they can see a rough cut of the edit. And for me, that's probably the best time, because the production have brought together a basic shape, and the actor has some distance from it, and then they can see it. And it's not about saying, oh, I've got a bit of cellulite here, can you not use that shot? It is about making sure that the requirements have been honoured regarding simulated sex and nudity, but also just that they're seeing it. Yeah, so they know what the world's going to see. They know what their granny's going to see when it's out into the world, and can sign off on it. And all of that means that everybody can get behind it. When it's out in the world, the producers know that they have supported everybody to be taken care of personally, and it means that everybody can get behind and be really proud of what they're putting out, not a cast member possibly feeling nervous about what it might be seen. And then the next aspect is then supporting through to how it goes out into the world. And some things might just be sort of fade away quite quickly. But if the industry, or if the press and then the public at large take on, so it just has a life of its own. And that also needs taking care of, so that you're supporting your cast and how they speak about it. And it's quite a thing, when they pick up on something you never even thought of, and that equally can really impact somebody, so that we can again help them to stay taken care of, professional, autonomous, being able to journey through that journey with the press and the interest from the world at large, so that by the time they get to the next production, that there's not a hangover that they feel has injured them, or they feel they have to hold on or can't be as free as an artist. So it's quite an interesting arc in that whole aftercare.
Yeah, and I think for me, the best production companies like Seesaw and the studios that do it the best will provide support throughout, and with Seesaw right up to release. Because as Ita was saying, we worked with Jeff on Baby Reindeer, and you can see that's been released, and there's lots of speculation on X and lots of things that can be triggering, but the fact that people can still access support. And for me, obviously, when we started, it was very much, some production companies will be like, everyone can have 2 sessions of support. And you're just like, so then it's tick boxy. So we always wanted to make sure that even if they can only have 2 sessions, they can continue with the same practitioner with us on like a discounted self-fund if they need to. But, I never wanted that sense that anyone is just abandoned, and we will always do our best to support people with the support they need. And that rolling into post and, what's the reaction going to be like when it's released, especially like when the Heartstopper, the young actors were all starting, what's that going to be like for them? They're the moments. And actually what I find is, often we're much busier providing, the majority of our work is online, but we're much busier when the shoot's wrapped, because nobody has time in the day. Even though we provide 24-hour care, when they've done those 10+1 days, got home, commuted, the last thing they want to do is check in with a counsellor. So I tend to find that in post we're busier. And so it's just that reminder to productions that actually that's the time when people have that headspace to offer, to make sure they can access the support and debrief and decompress.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, both of you were saying that, you do need a bit of time to process what's happened, and then actually that might be when you most need the support. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move on to talk a bit more about authenticity, and something that I'm sure a lot of people have noticed in recent months is a conversation on social media about how Gen Z don't want to see sex scenes, and everyone got very loud about it, as they do with social media. I wonder whether it's being loud for the sake of something that people are just sort of latching onto on social media, and actually whether Gen Z and younger generations are actually just a bit more alive to the fact that historically quite a lot of sex scenes have been quite exploitative and unnecessary, and actually what they want to see is more authenticity. So I think it would be great to, well, firstly, I think it would be really nice to hear from everybody on the panel an example of a recent authentic depiction of sex on screen that you've thought was really good. I'm going to start with you, Jeff.
Oh my God, fun. So I'm going to cheat and do slightly two, because I think one, I want to do Heartstopper because I want to do like the first time Charlie and Nick kiss, because I sometimes think like sex, obviously we think of like penetrative sex and we go quite far, whereas I think actually part of what made that moment so beautiful is sometimes like intimacy is about that innocence and that feeling of capturing that, like the first time you're with someone who you really, really like. And I thought that was like beautifully wonderful and innocent in a way that I think resonated. The other I would say is from Pose, where Angel, who's a trans woman, has sex in season 1 and season 2. She has sex with 2 cis men, different men in each season. And I think for so often, particularly like trans women's bodies in the media have been objectified and dehumanized. And in both of those seasons, you see these men really worshiping a body that is often not seen as being worthy of love. And I think that was really quite transformative to see on screen, and I think more of that. And I think that's what Gen Z sort of speaks to. They want to see more and different representation. We don't just want to see the same stuff that we've seen for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's a similar vein, I think. So bringing it back to sex education again, I think there are loads of brilliant examples of authentic and really kind of enthusiastic consent given in scenes. But the one I want to focus on particularly is between Maeve and Isaac. And I think, yeah, not only a brilliant example of the fact that they're continuously communicating with each other and talking and asking, does this feel nice? Is this okay? It's also a turning point in terms of inclusivity. Isaac is probably one of the first main characters who is disabled, who is in a sex scene, and the scene isn't defined by the fact that he's a wheelchair user, or his wheelchair and his disability don't kind of come into it. So I think that's, yeah, a real kind of turning point for me, and I think that's a brilliant example.
I think for me, I was thinking about All of Us Strangers, and I think many of the scenes with Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal were just so beautiful. They weren't particularly explicit and graphic, but there was just something so authentic and beautiful about their depiction of the love within that relationship. So that would be my recent one.
And for me, I had the joy of working on Men Up. That was very much, like Mr. Bates, an absolutely passion project for everybody involved about the development of Viagra in the industry. So that was fabulous. We worked with the actual doctor who had that inspiration working with his diabetes patients. So again, making sure we got the detail from him. So we had a very interesting bit where we had to show the penis gauges going on. We were looking at how are we going to do this and how are we going to show it so that people understand, but we don't make it too graphic. And so they ended up coming up with this idea of actually let's do the demonstration on, because we looked at how you could do it with hiding a leg, and we just said not clear enough. So they got a really fantastic medical model of a flaccid penis, and then we did a really clear choreography of that on there. So again, it gives the medical information and doesn't confront anybody. And I also on that production, the lovely Alex Roach's character has had a double mastectomy, and her character feels that their lack of sex is due to her feelings about her body. And I'm so proud as well. I think for everybody out there, I've got many friends, unfortunately, who have equally suffered from this. And I'm also so proud of those scenes. Alex did her work, and we spoke to people who have experienced that. And the prosthetic team were brilliant. And again, it's always a whole team that come together. And I'm so proud of those scenes. And I think they tell a really beautiful story.
That's amazing. I've not seen that yet, so I'm gonna check it out. Isabel, I wanted to chat to you about, I guess, sort of doing a couple of call-outs, really, but Brooke, what do you think is the I guess, what do you want to see depicted on screen? You talked about enthusiastic consent. You know, what are the big ticket items for you guys?
Where do I start? There are so many. I think the key issue for us at the moment is that year on year we're seeing soaring STI rates, so sexually transmitted infection. The rate of STIs is kind of since records began, they're at the highest this year. So I think anything around safer sex, anything around condom use, particularly think about all the sex scenes you've seen on TV, like how many of them are using condoms? Not very many. So we definitely want to see more of that. And then similarly, we're working kind of with a backdrop of public health funding cuts. Sexual health services are in crisis point. We often get kind of people come to us, which is brilliant that people want to engage in sexual health and talk about sexual health, but we often get people come to us who want to use storylines and promote testing, which is great, STI testing, which is great, but actually there's very little investment in and conversation around prevention. So condom use, definitely. And we've actually done some research which is going to be published next month, which looks at young people's attitudes to condoms and contraception, and it's really interesting and really nuanced. And one of the a little spoiler from it, I can't share any data, but one of the really interesting things that we've seen is that young people, there's a really high proportion of young people who are having, or the people that we surveyed, are having conversations around condom use and contraception when they're having sex with their partners, but that's not translating to young people using condoms and contraception. So whilst we don't have all the answers as to why that's happening, there's a very real possibility that people are having conversations, are being challenged, and are not feeling confident to advocate for themselves in terms of, you know, pushing for their rights to, and then wanting to use condoms. So, and we hear that often through our education work in schools as well. So I think any kind of role modelling of how to navigate difficult conversations like that and healthy relationships, all relating to safe sex and all relating to kind of enthusiastic consent, I think, yeah, we would love to see more of that. And just going back to the previous question that you asked that I didn't mention was just on the flip side, and we've talked a lot about collaboration and how important it is. And from my point of view, I just want to remind everyone that charities have a lot to offer and also want to be involved in that kind of development piece. We often get people come to us with kind of fully formed scripts and kind of want some endorsement of that script, and that's not how we see true collaboration. And if we want to make the most impact, then like any relationship, you're going to get out of it what you put in. So I think, just to reiterate that point as well.
Yes, exactly. It's not true consultation if you're just saying, can you agree that this is fine, please? Thanks. Jeff, I wanted to get your thoughts on, obviously I was talking about social media and how true anything we can see on social media is. But what are your thoughts on how social media has changed the conversation around sexual experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think social media has, for all of the hell that it has brought the world, I think there's a way in which social media has allowed communities to speak to each other and share knowledge in a way that I don't think is necessarily new. It's just different, because I think anyone who's from a marginalized community will know marginalized communities have always had histories of magazines and newsletters, things that we use to communicate information through each other. And I think social media, the power of it is just allowing people to have a better understanding of what they should expect and what they can expect. And an example that you made me think of is when the monkeypox sort of outbreak was happening. Gay and bi men were able to get that vaccine so fast in ways that came through not because of going to sexual health services, because we were able to communicate with each other through Twitter, through Instagram. That happening, yeah. And we mobilized ourselves as a community with a history of needing medicine in a way that was only available because social media, because the government wasn't giving us advice on what we needed to do. I had my mum calling me. She was like, I work in a school. Do I need to get a vaccine? I was like, are you having sex with men? Who have sex with men? She was like, no. And so I think that's what social media is doing, is I think it's creating a level playing field in some senses. I think there's a lot of awful ways in which social media is being used, and I think there's a lot of bad things, particularly with sex and the proliferation of porn on social media, that's not great. but I think social media is allowing communities to have access to information and knowledge that we didn't before. And I think we're seeing that play out with younger generations who have grown up on this. And I think what's worrying is I think there's not enough research and work being done around, there is a generation who have now been raised where porn is accessible to them at any point. And what is that doing to them? And are schools talking about that enough? And I'm not here to say there's like a moralistic view of is porn good or bad. It's just the reality of what that's like. And so what is that shaping their view on sex, good, bad? And I think that's where we need to treat it more seriously, but also be speaking to these people about what they need.
Yeah, I think we could easily get derailed talking about porn, especially when it comes to authenticity. But we don't have that much time left. So I wanted to see if anyone had any questions from the audience. I think there's a mic coming. I can see someone at the back there.
Hi there. Yeah, my question's for Sarah. Fantastic organisation. I've directed many crew there myself. How do we get to a place where we elevate the wellbeing department to the level of camera, art department and design? And do we need to start making it a prerequisite for funding? Because the truth is, studios talk a great game, so do a lot of broadcasters, but it doesn't translate to all production companies. I wouldn't even say 50%. So how do we get it there? Because we had a great opportunity after COVID, and it feels like we may have missed that. So what's the next step?
Yeah, I hear you, and I think it should be embedded in every production budget as standard. Like when the BFC guidelines came out during COVID, that I was part of helping formulate. It was the recommendation was that every production has a line in for wellbeing support, and I think that has to be key. And when we provide support, we will provide it to everyone. It's everyone and anyone, from the above the line to the new entrants. We support all the screen skills trainees. I think it's about the education piece. We do a lot of training and proving that it works. So as much as I know you said it feels like we've missed the moment, from my perspective, I think some of the big studios, whether that's NBC or Warner's, we are embedded, so as standard all their productions will, but it hasn't filtered down into some of those smaller production companies, and there are still many that I think just see it as a tick box. And so I think it's spreading the word and talking about the importance and the difference it made. For us, it's hard with a mental health company because obviously the support is totally anonymous. And it's like, could you feedback? Anything is just so helpful to say that did help. So I think it's changing. It's slow, don't get me wrong. And I really am wary that it just reverts back to being, we put a helpline on the call sheet. That doesn't cut it. So I think, advocating, training, encouraging those HODs to attend the courses, to learn about not just mental health, but leadership, best practice, creating psychological safety at work. I think that's the key where it's going to change.
Sorry, just also say, if you ask crew, and when they're cutting that out, if you said to every crew member, can we take a tenner out of your rep thing to pay for it, I promise you, all of them would say yes. All of them would say yes.
Yeah, I promise you, and just to that point, we worked on a really big production that will remain nameless, and they were, fudging over, we'll have 20 sessions, or no, we'll have 50 sessions. And I was like, God, if you asked that Hollywood actor to take a 0.04% cut in her salary, I'm sure she'd agree. And that's the mindset change, I think.
Oh, this lady in the stripes here.
Hi, my question's around what you've found when you've gone onto set and conversations around sex and another topic have come in. So, for example, if the experience is the person is going through grief and that's channeled in through sex, how do you navigate that where you're having to deal with a tough topic and then experiencing it through sex? Does that make sense?
Is that for me?
Anyone, yeah.
Well, so what we're looking at in our journey through to that open communication and that checking out the agreement and consent is really identifying where someone is at personally and what they need, and what their requirements are. So that goes for what they're happy to perform regarding nudity, simulated sex, but also where they're at emotionally and where they are at personally, and then what they need to support them to then step into character and serve character. And then that's where if I identified that someone was being activated or was struggling in some emotional way, then that's what I'd come back and then refer on to Sarah. So it's absolutely, or the person who's in that role. And that's what's glorious, is again just the shift with all the practitioners now and the industry understanding that actually rather than just going, you're an actor, you said yes, you've read the script, get on with it, and we don't speak about it, and in that place of eyes shut, deep breath, just do it. So, you know, and all the bad practice that had happened there, it doesn't actually give a production the best storytelling, it doesn't give it the best content. And that's a process that allows someone to be able to know that they really can speak their truth, that it will be listened to and heard. They can feel empowered and autonomous, and we can all work professionally, supporting who they are personally and allowing them to be the best professional.
I think we don't have time for any more questions, I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is such an interesting topic, and thank you all for really bringing it to life for us. Sam, Jeff, Isabel, Sarah, and Ita, thank you all very much.
Thank you.